Seeing the lot of you together like that, it reminds me of the old days. Ardbert and the rest, drinking, and bickering and laughing. Drove each other half mad at times, but there was never any question of who'd be there when times got tough. Can't help but wonder, can I? If I'd had companions like that back home, could it have been saved? I'm not the only one who tried, though each of us stood alone. There was Unukalhai. Yes. He, too, was one would-be savior of the 13th, and was spared his fated demise by Asian devices. We spoke once, after the destruction of our world. If the others could be saved, we thought, we yet had parts to play. What he's up to now that Elidibus is gone, though, I have no idea. Has he found himself a new role, as I have? Or does he feel as adrift as we were back then? If you encounter him in the source, I ask that you help him find a way forward, just as you have helped all of us here.
The scions may have scattered to the four winds, but I still have plenty to keep me occupied.
The Warring Triad is the collective term for three immensely powerful acorns that were brought into existence during the twilight of the Third Astral Era. Summoned by the native tribes of Mera Sidir, these entities were set against the encroaching forces of the Alagan Empire. The strength of a primal is determined by the fervent prayers of its faithful. And as the Merasidians' prayers called for saviors with the power to throw back an imperial invasion, the resulting incarnations were perforce imbued with nigh incalculable might. That the Alagans were capable of conquering such godlike beings well illustrates the incredible heights to which their technology had ascended. The implacable empire subdued and imprisoned the Warring Triad, shackled them to machinery that sustained the acorns' forms whilst at the same time leeching away their infinite energies. For 5 millennia did the Warring Triad languish thus in dreaming servitude, their slumber undisturbed until Archbishop Thordan VII of Ishgard rattled the bars of their cage. The Archbishop had come to Azizella seeking to absorb the Three's power and make of himself a god without rival. It was fortunate, then, that the Warrior of Light and her companions thwarted Thordan before he realized his tyrannical ambitions, but the victory was not without consequence. The violence of the battle cracked the seals that keep the Triad in torpor, and the acorns have begun to stir. Worse, the Garlean Empire and their heavy-handed efforts to plunder the secrets of Azizella threaten to drag them into full wakefulness. These terrible entities must be destroyed before they arise in all their cataclysmic splendor.
The Warrior of Light has toppled the first of the Warring Triad. We knew little of Sephiroth other than that he was the chief deity of a tribe of tree-like beings, as sacred tree ascended to godhood. Alagan histories discovered upon the event of his destruction, however, have brought fascinating new facts to light. These recordings attribute to Sephiroth the ability to induce spontaneous growth in living organisms through the manipulation of ambient etheric energy. It is noted that the icon did not hesitate to direct this ability upon himself. Sephiroth grew to gigantic proportions during his conflict with the armies of Alag, using his own colossal limbs to cut great swaths of devastation through their ranks. He was eventually overwhelmed, however, and his abilities contained. The Allagans performed experiments upon the captured icon, siphoning his growth-inducing energies into the cultivation of numerous chimerical monstrosities, one unnatural existence propagating countless others. When one believes one's control unbreakable, however, a single, overlooked flaw inevitably leads to catastrophe. I know of at least one civilization that collapsed under the weight of such hubris. The Garlean Empire's Vth Legion has breached the core laboratories of Azalla's research facility. Seeking to prevent the Imperials from extracting the Genesis expression, the Warrior of Light and her allies pursued the Legatus and his soldiers, and succeeded in denying him the vital formula. The Garleans claim their interest in primal harnessing technology comes from a desire to constrain the entity's wanton destruction. But while this purpose seems perfectly noble, such control would place the power of gods in the hands of a select group of men. Who then might oppose the Emperor should he wish to sunder the world? And what guarantee prevents error and happenstance from setting the primals free? Ever would the threat of their accidental awakening loom above our heads? By harnessing a primal, one is also condensing and concentrating its vast energies. Upon the being's release, its long-suppressed power and simmering rancor explodes with unimaginable violence. With their potency increased far beyond that of the typical beastman-summoned deity, the defeat of harnessed entities becomes exponentially more arduous. Such might can only be overcome with more might. But ultimately, the battle has no victor. When powers of this magnitude collide, they consume immense reservoirs of ether. The star will be drained of life before the clash can be decided, and all will crumble into oblivion. The goddess has fallen, and only one pillar of the warring triad remains. According to the records we discovered upon Sophia's destruction, the icon had once schemed to bring the Allagan Empire to ruin from within. The histories also spoke of her followers, and how they perceived the ever-expanding Imperials as anathema to the world's balance. Equilibrium is Sophia's domain. Her worshippers saw the righting of the scales as their sacred duty, and thus did they resist the Allagans' invasion with holy fervor. Never mind that the summoning of an icon did upset their precious balance all the more. The concept of balance is, however, of great interest to my master. A world must have both light and darkness, and a sudden surge of either will endanger its very existence. Upon our first meeting, my master spoke thus: I am not the light's servant, but for the present I must serve. One cannot arbitrate equilibrium if one is not fluid of stance. The tenets of our justice are found not in light nor darkness nor the gray shades in between. We but seek to enforce that which prevents the visitation of oblivion. To moderate the endless waves of war such that neither side claims victory, that is our charge.
The followers of Zervan were broken from their slumber, likely the doing of Sophia's worshippers, and immediately began attempting to rouse their master in the fullness of his power. We found ourselves in an unexpected alliance with the forces of the Vth Legion, and rushed inside the research facility to put a stop to the thrall's ambitions. Although we succeeded in this initial endeavor, the effort cost the lives of many Imperial soldiers, including that of regular Van Hydrus himself. Seizing the opportunity their sacrifice bought for us, the Warrior of Light led a company of echo-blessed champions against the half-woken demon, and cast down the final pillar of the warring triad. Upon discovering the flaws apparent in the Allagans' technology, the Legatus chose to abandon its acquisition, and looked to recruit the aid of the Scions with nary a moment's hesitation. His was a decision motivated not by glory, but by loyalty to his Emperor. Above all, he strove to enforce the will of his childhood friend, and ensure that the primal threat hanging over this star would be eradicated. Over the course of our quest to eliminate the warring triad, the meddling of the Garlean Empire has been our greatest obstacle. That an officer so lofty within its ranks should recognize the danger and make such a rational choice is a significant development in our war against the primals. Ere the star upon which I was born became the void, the champions who lived upon it chose to embrace self-destruction rather than cease their infernal conflict. They became lost within their own ambitions, strangling the life from one another even as the flood of darkness swallowed them whole. Here on Hydaelyn, the power of light is not so feeble. This world will survive while the balance holds, but we must also take care that the scales do not swing too far in light's favor. As we fight on the side of light, we must trust that our companions will steer us away from the lure of extremity, and help guide us along the narrow path to salvation. It is the actions of men such as Regular Van Hydras that give me hope that the future of this star is not beyond redemption.
Well met, K'nekotein. What brings you here today? Urianger did apprise me of your travels in the first, and of what became of Elidibus, at long last. But I was not aware that you were working with Sylvain. I consider her a comrade of sorts, though our time together was short. Looking upon the twisted remains of the world you tried to save creates a bond that few can understand. At that time, we spoke of what we could hope to achieve with our newfound immortality, and of our regrets. Though I then believed what had happened to be the natural result of my age and inexperience, I now think this was merely the least painful explanation I could offer myself. Sylvain is right, we ought to have sought each other out before it was too late. I would not make the same mistake again. With the warring triad gone, I am indeed in need of new purpose. But to seek it alone is folly. I should like to speak with Sylvain, assuming such a thing is possible. As I mentioned, she understands how I feel more than any other. You speak of the spirit vessel, correct? The means by which the scions return to the source. If I understand the principles at work correctly, then it was a near miracle that you succeeded in bringing them back without killing them. If Elidibus is to be believed, however, my current state makes me something of an exception in matters of life and death. In which case, there is naught to be lost from making the attempt. Please, say you'll help.
Pray forgive the delay. Thou didst seek my counsel. The gifts granted young Unukalhai by Hydaelyn and the Ascians may prove a boon in easing the transition. However, I know not to what extent, nor what might befall thy spirit should it be lost betwixt worlds.
Nevertheless, I know that this is my path forward. Please, Urianger.
Very well. If thou believest that thou shalt find new purpose in the first, I will do all in my power to see thee safely there. We shall be but a few moments. Mayhap a worthy tome might keep thee occupied whilst I perform the necessary magics. 'Tis done. Pray guard his vessel well. Unukalhai is as I and the other scions were on the first, a soul with form, yet no true body. Thus 'twas a simple matter to transfer him to the vessel using the self-same process as before. To withdraw his essence once across the rift ought to prove similarly straightforward. However, I fear that such an existence cannot sustain itself indefinitely. Look to the Asians' example, their persistent use of flesh and blood vessels surely hath cause. Be it danger akin to that which would have befallen us had we not returned to the source, I know not, but the time may come when the boy requireth a fully corporeal form. Should this come to pass, I trust that thou shalt come to his aid. For the moment, however, thou needst only convey the spirit vessel to Miqo'te. Farewell, both of thee. Back again, are you? I'm flattered that you've grown so fond of Northrend, or I would be, but you have that expression you not always wear when you're about to ask me for something. You did what? After all of the perils your friends faced, and the labors we undertook to return them to your world, you brought another soul across the rift. Have you no common sense? There had better be a very compelling reason for all of this. Well, removing spirit from vessel will be easy enough, I suppose. However, it requires a few moments without your breathing down my neck. Also, your friend is unlikely to materialize with clothes on, so I doubt they'll want an audience. You should wait here, perhaps take the opportunity for some self-reflection. Oh, very well. At least I tried. We'll find you at the Wandering Stairs directly, then.
You want me to speak with someone? Very well, you've done the same at my request often enough. How long are we meant to wait for this friend of yours? I do have work to do, you know.
Ah, here you are. Pardon the delay, it took some time to acquire robes of an appropriate size.
Is this them?
Sylvain.
Unukalhai?
Indeed, it is. I trust me, I can hardly believe that I'm here myself.
I should think so. When I sent K'nekotein to ask after you, it never occurred to me that you might be able to cross the rift without Ascian aid.
My choices and my reasons are my own, now. If I am to have faith in them, in myself, I cannot hide who I am.
Speaking of which, Unukalhai was kind enough to fill me in, unlike some, and I was interested to hear of an erstwhile hero of the 13th serving libations at the Wandering Stairs. But that this hero should be you surpasses the scope of even my considerable imaginings.
Was that you at Grune's Licht? So long ago?
Not so long to me, or you, mayhap. Though I had thought I might at last put those days behind me. But perhaps this is for the best. They are not all bad memories.
They never are.
I should very much like to hear your story, should you be willing to share it.
Our world, like this one, had its share of would-be heroes, myself and Unukalhai among them. Unlike your warriors of light, however, each was unaware of, or unconcerned with, our fellows. But to fight alone is to fall alone, and the insidious ether of the Orosite used to seal primals corrupted once noble souls and turned them, one by one, to darkness. Even those who resisted this fate could not escape its consequences, no surprise, perhaps, as we continued to struggle in solitude. We were spared by Ascian machinations, but only as our world met its death.
But what if that death could be undone? I was told that much of the first was consumed by light, as our home was by darkness, yet balance and life are being restored to even that scoured land they call the empty. If such a thing is possible, then why not the reverse? Could we not bring light back to the 13th?
Even the Ascians considered the 13th lost. Thus was it excluded from the rejoining. But what say you? You have a way of making miracles happen. You speak almost as though you've really seen it. Wait.
Pardon the interruption, but might I suggest a closer examination of conditions on the 13th before we form any conclusions? Have you lost your head? The Crystal Tower is not a toy, and you are not to use it to unleash great and terrible void sent upon this world. According to the records, there was a group who worked out how to open small void gates, through which to summon minor fell beasts and the like. Magics of that nature should work, though I am unsure if any with knowledge of the original technique yet live.
How fortunate! Let us inquire with the Stainer immediately.
Yes, you do that. In the meantime, I will ready a means for peering into the depths of the void without endangering ourselves. Use these to contact me when you're prepared to open the gate.
We shall, at the very first opportunity, I promise.
He really hasn't aged a day. Not that it should surprise me, of all people, but...
What a fascinating place to spend one's days. I should love to hear more about the patrons that have passed through.
So she told him to take a long walk off the short pier.
That dwarf can drink. I feel like there's an axe through my skull and she's completely fine.
It's always a pleasure, K'nekotein.
Hi. But who's your friend? I don't believe we've met.
We have not, as I'm not from this world. The situation is rather complicated, but I hope that you might be willing to assist me.
It is true that we have the means to open such portals. We call them hollows, and it was through one of these that I was drawn into the rift.
So it is possible.
Not with my power alone. I understand the greatness of your need, and were Nilebert still at my side, I should be glad to make the attempt, but the technique required the combined force of our energies in resonance.
If one person's magics are insufficient, perhaps I could assist. From what I can sense, our ethereal reserves are roughly equivalent, and our physical similarities suggest that our energies are not incompatible.
I fear you underestimate the difficulty of the task. Nilebert and I were born for this, and even so, it took us years before our efforts were perfectly in step.
I realize that it's a lot to ask considering that we've just met, but could we not at least attempt it? Yours is the only such magic I've ever heard of, and if we might actually be able to save my home.
May I interject? You will recall that the crystals in my possession preserve the memories of the former warriors of light, including Nilbert's, in ethereal form. And Unukalhai here has a particular talent for interpreting the minds and motives of ethereal beings, the primals.
If I could apply the same principles to interpret Nilbert's crystal.
An experiment worth trying, at the least. I'll fetch it.
Speak to me, Nilbert.
Do his memories of training with Tainer remain?
They do. And such strong sentiment with them. Tainer. You should know that Nilbert desired nothing so much as to rescue you, his dearest friend. He held so fiercely to his memories of the technique you mastered together because he hoped they might be your salvation.
Oh, Nilebert. I won't let them go to waste. I will do what I can to help see the 13th restored.
Thank you.
I won't pretend I understand the half of what's going on here. Just keep them from running headlong into anything too dangerous, will you? Nothing to worry about so long as you're around, I'm sure.
Wicked White. I nearly forgot, I've half a dozen orders to fill. You know where to find me when you've made progress with the gate.